All right, so let's talk about the brain, the systems of the different nervous systems and different parts of the brain and what it is composed of, right? So we're going to first start with the nervous systems. The nervous systems, okay? Let me change this color, or I'll actually make it bigger. So the nervous system, there are two main ones in our body. There is the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, right? So what are these composed of? Okay, the CNS is the central nervous system. So when we think of the center command or the command center, we think of our brain, right? That is the command center and headquarters of our brain, of our body. It is what controls everything in our body, the thinking, the planning, the movement, the everything. Except some things, and we'll get into that. So CNS includes the brain, like we said, and the different parts of the brain, so the brain stem, and then the spinal cord. And we'll explain why it has to do with the spinal cord. Okay, now the PNS. The PNS has to do with all the nerves in your body, all these little strings in your body. So this is little Johnny right here. We get to this, and the green will be the nerves. You have nerves everywhere connecting to every part of your body. And this is what allows you to move and feel things, right? So, go back to this. This has all the nerves in your body. It is composed of all the nerves in your body. It's a network of nerves. It's basically a map of nerves everywhere in your body. The PNS, or the nerves, the peripheral nervous system, will send impulses to the central nervous system so that the brain can understand what's going on, and then the central nervous system will receive and can send impulses or commands to the peripheral nervous system. That's why you're able to pick things up, move things, or do things with your body. If we didn't have this sending signal, then we would never be able to move. We would just be worthless and do nothing. So the CNS receives plus sends impulses to the PNS. And the PNS is all the nerves in your body. And that is what sends these signals to the CNS. Okay. Now, let's go into the brain, because we saw the brain right here, talked about the brain. Now, what is the brain composed of? Okay, so the brain. The brain has many different parts, and those parts do different things, right? Now, the first part, if we look at our brain, let's draw our little brain. Okay. And then this would be the stem. Okay, we have our brain here. Now let's kind of actually label things. So the front part right here, the front part. And then this part, which is this part right here, and then this part, and then that part. Okay, so we have different, now we're looking at it on the right side, right? So this would be the front, this would be the back, right? So we have different parts. First, we have the frontal lobe. I mean, pretty simple. It's in the front lobe. So it's in the front of the brain. What does the frontal lobe do, and what does it have to do with? Frontal lobe has to do with thinking and reasoning and planning and some personality. Okay. So this has to do with this right here, with the frontal lobe right here. Next, in this area, we'll color this like a green. we have the parietal lobe. So this lobe right here has to do with all senses of touch and physical feeling, right? Not the feeling in your mind, the physical touch, right? So let's write that down. Physical touch and feeling. Physical feeling, remember. Right here, we have the temple. When you touch your right in front of your ear, you can feel your temple. That's what it's called. So this is actually called the temporal lobe. So let's actually write that down. What does the temporal lobe do, and what does that have to do with? It has to do with it's close to your ears, so that's how you know that it's your temporal. It has to do with the hearing, so when you listen to things, that's your hearing. Your speech, so when you talk, which also has to do with language, since that's how you talk in a language. So it has to do with everything that has to do with speech, language, speaking, hearing things. And remember, deaf people, when they can't hear things, they have trouble talking, right? So if they have a problem on their temporal lobe, which is their hearing, then they will have trouble with their speech and language. Now, this back part is called the occipital lobe. Occipital lobe right here. Now, this has to do with the vision. So the vision is controlled by the back of your brain, all the way in the back right here. This has to do with vision. It's all vision. It controls all your vision. That's the reason you see things. Okay? Now, if we wanted to know what this whole entire top part is, this is called the cerebrum. The cerebrum. Don't confuse it with the cerebellum, which we'll get into later. Cerebrum. Okay. Can I make this bigger? Yeah. Is that spelled right? Wait, that is the cerebrum. So the cerebrum has to do with the frontal, this part, the parietal, which is a touch, the occipital, and the temporal. Okay. Now, if we go a little bit down, we have right here, this is called the cerebellum. It's like a little bell in the back. Now, the cerebellum has to do with, let's make this smaller. It has to do with all the posture and the balance. So that is basically the back of your brain, right under the back of your brain. That's where all the posture, the way you stand, the way you sit, the way you move, and the balance you have when you're standing up. So that has to do with right here. That has to do with the cerebellum. That's a cerebellum right here. Okay. Now here, this is a stem. It looks like a plant stem. It looks like a tube. This is split into different parts. Let's do a different color, actually. This is split in different parts. 1, 2, 3. We have 3 parts of the brainstem. The first part, which we can look at, is the pons. The pons, P-O-N-S, right here. So what does the pons do? It's right here. The pons regulates the breathing and respiratory. I'll just do resp. Right here. It controls the breathing and the respiratory. Now in the middle, it's pretty simple. We have the midbrain. Okay, now it's doing that. The midbrain. It's pretty simple. It's in the middle. Now the midbrain and the next one, which is the medulla oblongata. Keep spelling it wrong. No, obligata, obligata has to do with all the basic functions of living. So, basic life functions. Now, what is a basic life function? Basic life function is all the breathing, your heartbeat, swallowing, and spelled that wrong, swallowing and coughing when choking, for example, or when you have something stuck in your throat. So the midbrain and this is very similar. They both have to do with the basic life functions as well as the pons because it has to do with breathing. So the brainstem is concluded by all basic life functions, right? So the cerebrum has to do with all the movement, the thinking, things of such. Now the cerebellum is different. That is the posture and the balance, right? Now, there's different parts. We're going to talk about the reflexes, right? Because when we move things, that's a command. But we have reflex. What's a reflex? A reflex is... Let's draw it. Reflex. A reflex is an action that happens that is not commanded to happen. Your brain is not telling that body part to move. It's not telling you to start choking. It's not telling you to move if you feel something hot, right? So it passes through reflex arcs. Now, what is a reflex arc? So if we go back to the PNS, remember, this is all a network of nerves. Now, there's those nerves, there's parts of it that are called the reflex arcs. Reflex arc is just a nerve, basically. It's like a pathway. Now, this nerve does not go through the brain, remember, because it sends and receives signals. It doesn't go through the brain, but it goes straight to your spinal cord, okay? Your spinal cord. So it goes straight to the spinal cord and tells it to move, because your spinal cord has to do with movement. So it goes straight to the spinal cord and uses interneurons to move. These are interneurons to move to the spinal cord. To then move whatever is happening. That is a reflex arc. So a reflex arc is very quick and it happens very quick and it does not pass through the brain for the reason that it's happening. Okay. So now we've understood the parts of the brain, what a reflex arc is, and the spinal cord. Okay. Now the brain. Let's go back to the brain. The brain has different parts. The brain has a limbic system. A limbic system has to do with the learning and the emotion part, right? I'm not even going to draw it because it's not very important. It includes the hippocampus, which is processing and reasoning and short-term memory. And it also includes the amygdala, which has to do with the emotion and moods, such as depression, anxiety. That's basically it for the limbic system. We won't go too much into the rest, but let's go back. So now we've talked about the brain. We know how it works. We know the parts. Let's go to the nervous systems. The nervous system has links. So PNS has links to your brain and the body. The PNS. Let me erase that. PNS, right? PNS does different things and has different links. It has the somatic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. it also has the sympathetic let me actually make it easier. Let's just draw and the sympathetic. So the sympathetic, think of it as the flight or fight response. The flight or fight response. All right, so that is the flight or fight response. It increases your heartbeat, increases blood flow to your major organs, and allows us to breathe more efficiently. So that is when something stressful is happening or when a dangerous occurrence is taking place, right? Now the opposite of that is the parasympathetic. That is the relax and digest. This is when your body is able to relax. So when you're sitting and thinking of something, you're relaxing, you're digesting what's going on. You're digesting your thoughts, the food also you just ate, and things of such. So your blood flow decreases. This decreases your blood flow, which then decreases your heartbeat, which allows you to rest and to breathe slowly. So going back to the reflex arc, remember this has to do with spinal cord. So spinal cord always has to do with movement and reflexes. I'm just reminding you because it's important. Now we have the somatic nervous system, and then the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system controls automatic functions, right? And these are the automatic functions we were just talking about, the parasympathetic and sympathetic. So these are the automatic things that just happen like that. Your brain doesn't tell it to happen, it just does it. So let's draw a little line going to this and to this. Now the somatic nervous system regulates voluntary movements. So your muscles, things like that. So when you want to go pick up a green ball, your somatic nervous system, is going to receive impulses from your brain telling, okay, I want to pick that up. So your somatic nervous system is going to go help you voluntarily pick that ball up, right? So this is voluntary actions. You're voluntarily doing something, right? You're commanding your brain and your nervous system to do things. Your brain is commanding your nervous system to do things. So that is basically it, okay? We just want to go back up and do a little review. Remember, the CNS has the brain, includes the brain stem, and the spinal cord, right? Remember, the brain stem is right here. It includes the pons, the midbrain, and the medulla oblongata. Your brain, which is the top of your brain, which is the cerebrum, includes the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, and the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe, right? So if you want to look at a brain diagram, this one. Remember, we have the temporal lobe, as explained, the occipital lobe, as explained, the parietal, and the frontal. Right here, we can see the brain stem, which then leads to the spinal cord, right? I don't know why the brain stem is not labeled. And with the brainstem, right here. The brainstem is this right here, which then leads into the spinal cord. Like I said, the cerebrum is the top part, and the bottom part, which is a little bell in the back, which has to do with posture and balance, is the cerebellum. It's a bell. Now, if you look at the brainstem a little closer, this is exactly what I was drawing. We're not going to focus on this, but we're going to focus on the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. So these are just the parts, exactly the parts. Now the reflex arcs has to do with the spinal cord. The PNS has different systems, which is the somatic, which is voluntary actions that have to do with your muscles, and the autonomic nervous system, which is the auto actions. Remember the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is when you relax, you think, your heartbeat is lower, and your blood flow is lower as well. It's decreased. Your sympathetic is your fight or flight response. It's when something dangerous is occurring or something that is stressing you is taking place, right? So it's fight or flight. It's increasing blood flow, increasing heartbeat for more efficient breaths of air.